back now to this morning, and today is the official birthday of Her Majesty the Queen, and to mark the occasion she takes the salute at the annual military parade of Trooping the Colour. The commentator is Tom Fleming.
The officers take post. 24 officers for the 8 guards on parade for the Queen's birthday parade of Trooping the Colour, which takes place each year on a Saturday in June on perhaps London's most famous wide-open space, Horse Guards Parade. The guards already in their familiar L-shaped formation. To the north of the parade, facing the mass bands across the square, is the colour to be trooped at this morning's birthday parade, the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards. In the keeping of Sergeant Kevin Byrne from Doncaster. He's 30, had decided to be a miner before he joined the army in 1971. The right sentry is Guardsman Ian Pollock. He's 18, coming from Aldershot. Perhaps the army was his first choice. The left sentry, Guardsman Merry, as in Ha-Ha, comes from Oxford and is 21. The mass bands, sadly all the guards bands have been cut by 5 musicians this year. 47 musicians from all 5 guards regiments, accompanied by the corps of drums of the 4 battalions on parade and pipers from the Scots Guards and Irish Guards. Some 360 musicians in all. The 5 drum majors in their magnificent gold lace tunics of the state clothing which they wear, because the sovereign is present. The senior drum major from the Guards Depot, Drum Major Dixie Dean, Irish Guards, wears the badges of all 7 regiments of the Household Division on his crossbelt. The field officer in brigade waiting in command of the parade is Colonel Malcolm Havergal, OBE, Coldstream Guards, riding Walter, a police horse from West Dulwich. He will be in command of this birthday parade, and in the stands, an integral part of this annual ceremonial, spectators in their thousands from all over the world, watching just as you are at home. And at the other end of the mall, made into a ceremonial way as part of the nation's memorial to Queen Victoria, whose memorial stands glimmering in gold at the far end in front of Buckingham Palace, the Queen Mother, who arrived there from Clarence House by car 20 minutes ago, now leaves in her barouche with the Princess of Wales and Prince Edward accompanying her. The coachman and footman wearing semi-state livery. And so round the memorial and into the Mall. The barouche drawn by these old favourites, Rio and Santiago, who were named for the Queen's state visits to Chile and Brazil. And so when the Queen Mother arrives at Horse Guards, she'll drive under the archway of the Horse Guards building, with a line drawn in the roof of the arch that separates the parish of St Martin-the-Fields from the parish of St Margaret's, Westminster. And there she will watch the parade from the centre window of the Major General's office. Wellington's desk is still there. And from that central royal box, the whole stage is set before you. Number 1 guard, called the escort for the colour at this stage, and number 2 guard are both found by the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards. Familiar red plume to the right of the bearskin, buttons in 2s on the tunic. Number 3 Guard has opened up already for the arrival of the Queen Mother, just beside the Guards Memorial to all 5 regiments of Foot Guards. Number 4 Guard, too, is found by the 1st Battalion of the same regiment, Coldstream Guards. So 5 and 6 Guards at the angle of the parade are found by the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards, who trooped their colour in 1983. White plume to the left of the bearskin cap and regular buttons. And then in front of the Admiralty building, number 7 and number 8 Guards found by the 1st Battalion Scots Guards. No plumes in their bearskins, the central regiment of the original 3 Guards regiments, and buttons in 3s as the 3rd of these original regiments in seniority. All 3 regiments on parade have a pedigree of over 300 years. William Kent's Horse Guards building is 100 years younger. It was completed by Kent's assistant John Vardy in 1760. Surely one of the most pleasantly proportioned buildings in London. Constructed on the site of the tilt yard of Charles II's favourite palace of Whitehall. When on the morning of 5th January 1698 Whitehall Palace was all but gutted by fire, St James's Palace became the official residence of the sovereign. It was only in Queen Victoria's reign that Buckingham Palace became the premier London residence of the monarch. But St James's Palace has always remained the formal location of the court. Foreign ambassadors are accredited still to the court of St James. And at the daily guard mounting in the forecourt of Buckingham Palace of the 2 detachments of guards which form the Queen's Guard for the day, the St James's Palace detachment is the senior. And it is at St James's that the captain of the Queen's Guard establishes his headquarters, and there that the colour is lodged. Her Majesty the Queen rides from Buckingham Palace, dressed in the uniform of Colonel-in-Chief, Coldstream Guards. She's Colonel-in-Chief of all the regiments of the Household Division. And she's riding once again Burmese, which was given to her in April 1969 by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Burmese is now 23 years old. Now, of course, the 21st of April 1926 is the Queen's real birthday. This is her official birthday. And with her, riding for the first time, His Royal Highness the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, riding for the first time as 7th Colonel of the Irish Guards. He was appointed in August last year to that appointment. But that, in fact, is the Crown Equerry, Sir John Miller, escorting Her Majesty into the map. And there you see the Queen's procession, the 1st and 2nd Divisions of the Sovereign's escort, found by 54 troopers and 3 officers of the Life Guards. The Sovereign standard of the Life Guards. While ahead, into the approach road, under the Commonwealth flags, come the 2 lovely carriages of the Queen Mother's procession. The barouche, driven by Arthur Scholl, the Queen's coachman, semi-state livery, crimson coats, blue plush breeches, gold-buckled shoes and white stockings. Princess of Wales with her, and Prince Edward, as you can see. And as they turn left at the Guards Memorial, through the gap opened for them in number 3 Guard, so Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth will be greeted by a royal salute. The spectators stand. Queen Mother in yellow and white, Princess of Wales in pink and white. A colourful scene as she drives under the central archway. And when the Queen Mother looks down from the window above there, she will see the colour which we trooped this morning. The brand new Queen's colour presented to the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards only 3 weeks ago. Hobson's have been making regimental colours and uniforms for over 100 years. In the embroidery room at Hobson's, it was that the delicate and intricate work of making this new colour began in the early summer of 1984 under the supervision of Brenda Franklin. She'd been with the firm for 17 years. Once the design for the colour has been agreed in every detail by the regiment, a painting is made by the Royal College of Arms. This is the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion. Draftsmen and artists at Hobson's then set about drawing it to scale, section by section, making perforated stencils from which the girls worked their patterns of embroidery. At the workroom, the stencil background of the colour is edged with a protecting and strengthening tape, and then it's fixed to a frame with cords to keep the silk taut. With the colour guide chart beside her, Wendy Shepherd works on the crown. All the embroidery at this stage is done with silk threads, specially dyed to achieve absolute consistency in the shading. There are 16 variations of colour in the crown alone, and the work on it takes about 40 hours to complete. As this Queen's colour is made of a single thickness of silk, the 43 battle honours borne upon it, the garter, star and collar, and the crown all have to be double-sided. So, as you can imagine, it's especially tricky to ensure that the correct chronological order of the battle honours is maintained on both sides. Linda Hemmings, working with such care and concentration on the garter, is 21. She's embroidering with gold silk. The actual lettering on the garter and the buckle of the garter are worked in gold wire, the only parts of the colour that are. And the garter star at the centre of the design is embroidered with white silk. The work on the garter takes about 3 days to complete. Still in its frame, the new Queen's colour here of the 1st Battalion awaits examination by an inspector from the Ministry of Defence to check its accuracy and to approve the standard of craftsmanship before the colour is finally accepted by the regiment. It was just over 3 weeks ago, on the 22nd of May this year, that the new colours of both the 1st and 2nd Battalions Coldstream Guards were uncovered and rested on ceremonially piled drums in the Centre of Horse Guards Parade, before Her Majesty the Queen, Colonel-in-Chief of the Coldstream, as of all regiments of foot guards, formally handed them over to the safekeeping of the 2 battalions. There was a large turnout of the regimental family watching with those strangely mixed emotions as, before the Queen's arrival, the old colours of both battalions were marched off parade to the traditional strains of Auld Lang Syne. They'd been presented at Windsor in April 1976. After the Queen's arrival, the new colours were consecrated by the Chaplain General, and then Her Majesty prepared to present these new colours to the 1st and 2nd Battalions. She came forward, attended by the Colonel of the regiment, Major General Sir George Burns, who was commissioned into the Coldstream 53 years ago. Queen's colour of the 1st Battalion was received by the Ensign, 2nd Lieutenant, the Honourable Richard Margison, 25 years old and commissioned into the regiment less than 6 weeks before. The battalion's new regimental colour was received by 2nd Lieutenant Adrian Gain, also commissioned only in April. Her Majesty now crosses the roadway to present new colours to the 2nd Battalion. The Queen's colour, being trooped today, is received by the Ensign, 2nd Lieutenant Batt, Mr. Batt, he'll be called in the Coldstream Guards. Her Majesty formally acknowledges the new colour and then walks to where Second Lieutenant Henty kneels to receive the regimental colour of the 2nd Battalion. And that was the presentation just over 3 weeks ago here on Horse Guards Parade of the colour that you will see trooped today. As the Queen's procession now arrives, led by the massed mounted bands of the Household Cavalry in their state dress, drum horses, of the Life Guards and of the Rose and Royals with their solid silver kettle drums. And riding up the Mall, Her Majesty the Queen, with His Royal Highness the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Field Marshal His Royal Highness Prince Philip. Behind them, Major General His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales. Then the escort commander and the field officer of the escort. The first 2 divisions of the Sovereign's escort, found by the Life Guards, move along under the flags of the Singapore, Sierra Leone, Seychelles, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Her Majesty herself turns into the approach road, under the flags of Tonga and Tanzania and Swaziland. Majesty the Queen on Burmese, the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, who actually served with the Irish Guards from 1942 to 47, landed in Normandy with them in 1944. He's riding a bay gelding, St. David. Prince Philip once again on Solomon, 18-year-old bay gelding. Prince of Wales riding Centennial, now 15, presented to Her Majesty the Queen to commemorate the centennial of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The Prince of Wales is, of course, Colonel of the Welsh Guards. Prince Philip, Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, for 10 years now. Before that, Colonel of the Welsh Guards. And riding in the grey mare, a police horse called Blaze, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, Colonel of the Scots Guards since October 1974. And 2 of his uncles held the same appointment, King George VI when he was Duke of York and the late Duke of Gloucester. And the Queen moves onto Horse Guards Parade itself. And you can see that she's wearing the same medals as usual on her tunic, the Imperial Order of the Crown of India, the Defence Medal, the War Medal 3945, her grandfather's Jubilee Medal received 50 years ago this year. Applause for Her Majesty as she rides onto Horse Guards from the spectators. Her father's Coronation Medal, given in 1937, and the Canadian Forces decoration. So the Queen looking happy and smiling as she salutes the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion, Coldstream Guards, standing in front of number 8 Guard. And her arrival, which is always so wondrously punctual, as that great old clock on the tower above Horse Guards strikes 11 o'clock. It was the most famous clock in London before the days of Big Ben. And now, as Her Majesty rides along to the saluting base in front of Horse Guards Arch. We will see her glance up at the window where her mother will be watching from the Major General's window, and there's always a touching little moment as she looks up and salutes Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth above. Queen Elizabeth, who's been at... There she is. Salutes Queen Elizabeth. And lots of royal children waving down. The Queen's grandchildren are there. And now, the first royal salute by the Household Division to their Colonel-in-Chief. The Foot Guards order arms. The Royal Standard flies from Horse Guards building. Royal salute rings out, guns of the Royal Horse Artillery in Hyde Park, and the inspection of the line begins. As Her Majesty the Queen is preceded by the Brigade Major, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Armitstead, Coldstream Guards, and 4 troopers of the Life Guards. The Brigade Major, who was in fact the ensign himself, carrying the colour at the Queen's Birthday Parade in 1968. And Her Majesty, accompanied by the 4 royal princes, rides past the mass bands to begin the inspection of the line and of the Sovereign's escort. Mass bands play Spanish dances, and the first of the 5 parts of the parade begins. After the inspection comes the troop, a musical display by the mass bands, and this is followed, after the collection of the colour by the escort, by trooping the colour through the ranks, the march past by the Foot Guards in slow and quick time, finally the rank pass by the Household Cavalry at the walk and at the trot, included in the main parade since the first year of the Queen's reign. So an exciting moment for the Guardsmen on parade. There are roughly 1,000 on parade today here. And remember, 20% of these Guardsmen are on the Queen's Birthday Parade for the first time. This moment is the culmination of 6 weeks' preparation for each young soldier. From drill on the barrack square to the 2 full-scale rehearsals here in Horse Guards under the gaze of former members of these famous regiments. To stand at attention is the first drill position they're taught. Learning to stand still without movement or fidgeting is a discipline of field training as well as of the parade ground. Any unnecessary movement on a field of battle draws the eye of an enemy. On parade, it draws the eye of the garrison sergeant major. Majesty, the Queen, now passing, saluting the colour again as she passes in front of number 8 guard, and then she will turn the corner where the adjutant of the parade, Major Thornwell, stands on gallant grey. There she goes round the corner, accompanied by the four princes, Grand Duke of Luxembourg, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, Prince of Wales. Duke of Luxembourg on the left, Prince Philip, Duke of Kent in the grey, Prince of Wales, Gold Stick in waiting, Major General Lord Michael Howard, Master of the Horse, cocked hat, Crown Equerry and the equerries in waiting, all former Foot Guards officers, the non-royal colonels, the Colonel of the Coldstream Guards, Major Sir George Burns, and Sir Desmond Fitzpatrick, the Colonel of the Blues and Wars, Major General, General Jim Eyre and Yeoman, Silver Stick in waiting, Chief of Staff and the ADC to the Major General. As the Queen rides now behind 8, 7, 6 guards to the corner, the angle of the parade, and now past the Household Cavalry. Sovereign standard of the Life Guards. Majesty salutes the Sovereign Standard, which is carried by Squadron Corporal Major John Denton. And there are the drum horses. The Life Guards nearest to us, Coriolanus, 12-year iron grey gelding, presented by Her Majesty, joined the regiment in July 1977. The other drum horse, Belisarius, Blues and Royals, joined in 1983, and this is his first Queen's Birthday Parade. So Majesty now passes the Major of the Parade, Major Lord Phillips Grenadier Guards, on Annabelle. The mass bands stop to allow Her Majesty, the princes and her attendant officers to return to the Horse Guards building. The field officer stands the guards at ease. Now, when the Queen, the princes and her attendant officers have arrived back at the saluting base in front of the Horse Guards building, from which the Royal Standard flies alongside the Household Division flag, with its motto, Septem Juncta in Uno, 7 joined in one, the 7 regiments, that is, of the Household Division, the guards will be brought to attention again, and the mass bands will troop in slow and quick time. And somewhere in there, in the mass bands, is the Senior Director of Music, Guards Division, Lieutenant Colonel Dick Ridings, awarded an OBE in this morning's birthday honours. The field officer who gives all the commands this morning was a chorister once in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, sang at the Queen's wedding. So I don't know what his singing voice will be like after all the orders he'll be giving at the birthday parade this morning, but there he is. Major Dixie gives the word of command. And the slow march is, of course, the Huguenots by Meyerbeer. Quick march is when the Guards are on parade. Lance Sergeant Philip Couch was born 31 years ago in south of Devon, where his parents still live. Joined the Coldstream Guards in September 1969. Has spent all his service life with the Corps of Drums. Now he's detached himself from the mass bands and is marching to a position right of the escort. And when the bands eventually stop playing, he will beat the drummer's call, which will be a signal for the officers to take post and for the collection of the colour to commence. Lance Sergeant Couch now returns to his place in the mass bands. An orderly has marched across the approach road to take from the Sergeant Major of the escort, Regimental Sergeant Major John Dean, his pace stick, large sort of geometric dividers, leaving the Sergeant Major's hand free to draw his sword. The only time in his career a warrant officer carries a sword in parade. The subaltern, now by tradition, has taken command of the escort. So Captain Johnston gives the command, and the escort for the colour moves on. The traditional tune is the British Grenadiers, used by all the right flank or Grenadier companies of British infantry regiments. And when the escort have changed direction with this left form, they will mark time till the left guide, Company Quartermaster Sergeant Ian Beaumont, signals to Captain Johnson that the mass bands have cleared the line of march. There you see with the white colour belt the ensign for the escort, Second Lieutenant William Tower, commissioned last August. His father was Chief of Staff on this parade last year, Brigadier Peter Tower, and a member of his family served with the regiment during the Crimean War. As Captain Johnson crosses the central roadway, he has to look for the small marker stone 15 paces from the colour party, where he will halt the escort. The escort opens order and dresses again in open order. Mass bands have about turned, and the rest of the parade will be called to attention to witness the handing over of the colour. So the Guards, shoulder arms, household cavalry, carry swords. Sergeant Major Dean became Regimental Sergeant Major of the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards in February of last year. We'll pick up 2nd Lieutenant Tower, the ensign, and we'll halt 9 paces from Sergeant Kevin Byrne, who at present has the colour. Sergeant Major salutes the colour. Takes possession of it. Turns about. And when the ensign has saluted the colour and sheathed his sword, he will receive the colour from the Sergeant Major. now the ensign will turn about to show the colour to what has now become the escort to the colour. The sentries have ported arms and turned out to defend the colour. The escort to the colour shoulder arms. Taking Finn Tower with the colour, the regimental sergeant major and the colour party will now take their place in the escort. Sergeant Byrne and the sergeant major halting together at the rear. Captain Tower, now by means of left form, bring the escort into a position to begin trooping the colour through the ranks. And meanwhile, the 360 musicians in the mass bands perform their remarkable spin wheel, a movement passed on from generation to generation of musicians. Out of what appears to be absolute chaos, musicians facing in half a dozen directions at the same time, at a secret signal from the senior director of music, hidden in the middle there, perhaps that's what he got the OBE for, comes a miraculous order. The bands pivot on the centre. On the outside, there's a lot of speedy covering of long distances. In the middle, there's a lot of hanging around and marking time. So the slow march escort to the colour cut out so that the other 7 guards could be brought to the present arms before the Queen's colour of the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards is trooped to the traditional Grenadiers' slow march through the ranks. This simple ceremony of trooping the colours through the ranks had its origin long before there were organised units in a regular and uniformed army. Leaders have always sought to make their followers familiar with the emblems and devices to which they were to rally in a time of crisis in the field of battle. And eventually, each regiment, then each company of the British Army, had a distinguishing flag. From 1700, it has been the custom of each battalion to have its own colours. And in a foreign land, they were lodged each night in a billet which became the unit's headquarters. The colour was hung from a doorway or from a window to mark that location. And then early in the morning, the colour was escorted with honour to its place among the assembled troops. Colours have come to be revered as the consecrated symbols of a regiment's ongoing life and traditions. And as the escort arrives at number 2 guard, they keep carefully closed up and covered off so that they can resume their position to the right of the line. And then they can advance and present arms without having to do a dressing after they halt. The last command given by Captain of the escort, Major Crofton, to whom the command has returned. The officers take post. The colour moves to the rear of the escort. And that about turn was the first movement for numbers 2 to 5 guards at this morning's parade. Turn round to face St. James's Park. Breeze always seems to come through the trees. And now the first movement of these legs, which have been standing still for nearly an hour. Of course, what is happening is that the guards are being prepared for the march past in slow and quick time. A slightly different operation for numbers 6 to 8 guards. If they formed up in divisions before the corner, there would be a gap in the parade. But this way, miraculously, the 8 guards are equally spaced. And so the march past begins. The march past in slow time, first of all, to the music of old Coldstream marches arranged by Colonel Trevor Sharp, formerly of the Coldstream Guards. Queen's colour moves to the front of the escort for the march past. officer, Colonel Malcolm Abigail, OBE Coldstream Guards. At the front of the parade, behind him the Major of the parade, Major Lord Phillips, Grenadier Guards. And the field officer moves off, past the regiment's Colonel-in-Chief, saluting Her Majesty now. And the colour is lowered by the ensign. The Coldstream has 111 battle honours, 21 more than any other Foot Guards regiment. 42 are carried on the colours, and the Sphinx with the superscription Egypt. In the centre, the star within the garter, ensign within the crown. And this is the Coldstream Guards slow march, Figaro. Numbers 3 and 4 Guards found by the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards. Numbers 5 and 6 Guards found by the 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards. And this is the Grenadier Guards slow march, Scipio. Tradition has it that Handel wrote this tune as a parade march for the regiment long before it occurred to him to put it into his opera. And the last 2 Guards, number 7 Guard and number 8 Guard, found by the 1st Battalion Scots Guards, who march past to the Scots Guards slow march, Garb of Old Gaul. At the rear, the adjutant of the parade, Major Thornwell, Coldstream Guards. field officer now rides out from his position beside Her Majesty the Queen, turns to Her Majesty and receives her permission to go and give the command for the 8 guards to march past, this time in quick time. This march is Rigoletto. The field officer has given the command for the guards to quick march, and now he trots across to take his position at the front of the parade for the march past in quick time. Troops will be quite glad that the sun has gone behind a cloud. Someone called Horse Guards Parade this handsome desert of an arena, and it can be. When the sun shines, there's a glare comes back off it like off the Sahara Desert. quick march past now begins past Her Majesty. The tune, the vedette, gives way to the Coldstream Guards' quick march, Milanolo. And how smart that escort is. Sergeant Major Dean at the rear, carrying his sword for the only time in his career. Regimental quick march of the Grenadier Guards, the British Grenadiers. Quick march of the Scots Guards, heel and leg. Field officer salutes Her Majesty at the end of the march past, rides back to take command of the parade, moving back now to its original position, to the great march tune, Blaze Away. Queen's colour removes through the ranks to the front of the escort once more. The officers take post. And the massed bands leave the centre of the arena. The pipes and drums playing King George V's Army. The Pipe Major of the Scots Guards is Pipe Major Jim Banks, who hails from the Kingdom of Fife. Plays a set of pipes given to him by his grandfather. And this is the only time on this parade, actually here on Horse Guards Parade, that we hear the pipes and drums play. And the mounted band now moves on to the arena. The new drum horse of the Blues and Royals, Belisarius, Clydesdale gelding. He comes from Fife, like the Pipe Major, so perhaps he's been reassured a little by the sound of the pipes, because he's been a bit restless all morning. Director of Music, the Life Guards, is Major McCall. Appointed as Director of Music of the Life Guards January last year. The drum horses, Coriolanus, nearest to us, 12 years old, and nearest St. James's Park, Belisarius, 6 years old. Joined his regiment in '83, and this is his first Queen's Birthday Parade, a tall Clydesdale gelding. The solid silver drums, given to the Life Guards by William IV, and to the Blues and Royals by George III. They were his favourite regiment, the Blues. And now the Household Cavalry move onto the parade ground, led by the first two divisions of the Sovereign's Escort, and by the Life Guards. Standard, carried by Squadron Corporal Major John Denton, who joined the Life Guards 20 years ago. Sovereign Standard, presented here on Horse Guards Parade to the Life Guards on the 19th of May 1983. The Blues and Royals, who find the 3rd and 4th divisions of the Sovereign's Escort. Trumpeter on a grey horse, as always. These marvellous horses, all between the ages of 6 and 16, many from Ireland, and those who joined since last year have names beginning with K. This regimental walk march is the Life Guards Slow March, a traditional tune. The Blues and Royals Slow March. at the rear, the farriers. It's the farrier of the lifeguards with the black plume. Both wear dark blue tunics, carrying their ceremonial axes. Trumpeter, Trooper Gary Marsh. And that's his big moment as he sounds the crown to trot. And that grey horse that he's riding is called Delilah, and she is aged 13, only 7 years younger than the trumpeter. Field officer of the escort is Major Nick D'Ambruminal, the lifeguards. Each horse has its own regimental number and army number stamped on each front hoof. The guards present arms for the trot past with the sovereign standard. Reveille for the troopers was at 6 a.m. this morning. The horses had to be groomed and saddled for the parade by 9:30. Regimental trot is, of course, the keel round. Director of Music, Paul, salutes Her Majesty. And the mounted band move round in front of the Admiralty building behind number 6, 7 and 8 guards. The mounted drummer of the Life Guards is Corporal Major Fred Harmon. He's riding Coriolanus. Coriolanus was first used in this parade in 1980, and that was the last time that Corporal Major Harmon was the mounted drummer, because he had played the kettle drums in every trooping between 1972 and 1980. His father was an ex-Corporal Major Bernard Harmon. He played every time the Life Guards band was in parade from 1948 to 1962. And there may be a third generation Harmon drummer, as Corporal Major Harmon is a 6-year-old son named after the former drum horse Alexander. And now, all 7 regiments of the Household Division, a royal salute to Her Majesty the Queen. And with that royal salute, the Household Division wished the Sovereign and Colonel-in-Chief many happy returns of her official birthday. So the mounted band is moving in front of the Admiralty building, and they will move on and up the approach road. The sun comes out again, which makes such a difference to any movements of the Household Cavalry. And now the Foot Guards are forming into divisions to march off. And this is an officer joining the march off. And you will see that each guard has been turned into 2 divisions. They used to form 3 divisions before the march past, which meant a very long parade down the Mall. But now they close up. The pipes and drums play Prussian Glory, and the Sergeant Major's pace stick is brought to Regiment Sergeant Major Dean, necessary for the march past, the march back to the palace. He uses it like a large geometric divider, measures out the paces, which should be something like 30 inches per pace. Sovereign's escort moves away from Horse Guards up to the approach road, leaving the end of this great military spectacle to the Foot Guards. But what a sight, the cuirasses, the helmets gleaming in the sunshine, and everybody relieved perhaps that the sunshine is streaming down now when people are on the move and not standing around for an hour without moving. A last dressing for the foot guards. And so the guards. Order arms, stand at ease and stand easy, awaiting the march off. The escort and number 2 guard will be marched back to Wellington Barracks eventually. The escort, of course, forms the Queen's Guard today at Buckingham Palace. They marched back ceremonially into the new Wellington Barracks at the beginning of this year, having been the last battalion to leave the old barracks 23 years before. The numbers 3 and 4 guards, found by the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, they go to Hong Kong in February 1986. And the 5 and 6 Guard, the 1st Grenadier Guards, they go in the same month to Munster in Germany. Scots Guards stay at Purbright. And the battalion's not on parade. The 2nd Grenadier Guards have just returned from Belize and they're off to Northern Ireland. The 2nd Scots Guards are in Cyprus. They return in February 86. Irish Guards are in Germany, so are the Welsh Guards. So anybody who thinks that these are only ceremonial troops must remember that half of them are always overseas and they're all on active service. As those who remember the Falklands campaign will know that the Blues and Royals were there, the Scots Guards were there, the Welsh Guards were there. So, the Queen Mother's carriage now passes the approach road. She's on her way back, past her own home, Clarence House, to Buckingham Palace. The field officer, meantime, has ridden up to Her Majesty the Queen to say that the guards are ready to march off. So the field officer now returns to give the command to the guards to march off, but probably has noticed out of the corner of his eye that in the approach road a trooper has been thrown from his horse and is being picked up by stretcher bearers now. He is looking in that direction. He has spotted the problem. You can see the ambulance men just up in the approach road. And of course that approach road is a very narrow space for a parade of this size to pass through. I'm not sure that it was a trooper. It may have been a member of the public. But it was something that happened as the Household Cavalry were leaving the parade, so it may have been a horse that shied, who knows. Anyway, the Household Cavalry have now left the approach road, moved into the Mall, and they're on the way back to Buckingham Palace. And now the mass bands move off. Applause from the crowd for the very smart escort and perhaps for the brand new colour, trooped only 3 weeks after its presentation here on Horse Guards. this is quite different from the approach to Horse Guards. What happens now is that Her Majesty is joined only by people who are associated with the Foot Guards. So the field officer comes over and he will ride beside Prince Philip. Colonel Havergal riding beside the Duke of Edinburgh, who is Colonel of the Grenadier Guards. Behind them, the Duke of Kent on the grey, and the Grand Duke of Luxembourg. Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards, in the centre of the three now. Then the Major General, commanding the Household Division, Jim Eyre, the Crown Equerries and the Equerries in waiting to Her Majesty, who all served in the Foot Guards. And I don't know about cuts in the Guards bands, but this is, of course, 76 trombones. Perhaps interesting to think that the 5 regiments of Foot Guards represented now on this parade ground have between them given 1,000 years of service to the Crown. It was 180 years ago that a colour was first trooped to celebrate the Sovereign's birthday. And interesting perhaps too to think that old Burmese there, aged 23, must have seen some 48 Queen's birthday parades and rehearsals since he was first used by Her Majesty in 1969. Her Majesty moving under the flags of Zimbabwe, Zambia, Western Samoa, Singapore, Sierra Leone, and the Seychelles. And a great cheer for the Queen as she rides up that. What a splendid sight they make. Pipers from the Scots Guards and the Irish Guards, and Her Majesty the Queen. And so Her Majesty, in the tradition begun by her grandfather, whose Jubilee Medal of 50 years ago she wears on her uniform this morning, rides back to Buckingham Palace at the head of her guards. And the Queen Mother's barouche arrives back at Buckingham Palace. The Princess of Wales and Prince Edward with Queen Elizabeth. Horse Guards, the 8 colour sergeants with company colours who've been acting as markers leave the parade ground after standing motionless for 2 hours. Major General there with his cocked hat. The royal princes around the Queen. And the crowd at Queen's Gardens have waited a long time for the return of the Queen, leading the divisions of Foot Guards as the mass bands wheel right to the north of the Queen Victoria Memorial. A sight to capture forever. Her Majesty riding into position at the centre gate for the final march past. Watched by all the grandchildren. The Queen's Guard has marched into the forecourt. Emperor Hirohito's grandson there. The remaining divisions of foot guards march past Her Majesty. Queen Mother, Duchess of Kent, Prince Michael of Kent there. The guards have marched back to Wellington Barracks. And here now, the future directors of music up there. The mass bands of the Household Cavalry play as the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, who are not members of the Household Division, but they are household troops, rank past in full dress. They fired the birthday salute at 11 o'clock in Hyde Park this morning, and they take precedence over all other regiments when parading with their guns. Down the Mall, the crowds from Horse Guards and Trafalgar Square flow like a river towards the palace. And they're seen from the balcony. The Sovereign's escort rank past on their way back to Knightsbridge. Lord Frederick Windsor there, age 6. The wonderful sound of horses' hooves. As the field officer, Colonel Malcolm Havergal, OBE, Coldstream Guards, takes his leave of Her Majesty, and she turns to ride home between the old and new guards in the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. A royal salute. And what an amazing sight as the crowds now reach the Victoria Memorial and approach the palace itself. And a great welcome for the Queen as she joins her family on the balcony after 2 hours riding side saddle so effortlessly. A lot of pointing from Prince William of Wales. And all wait now for the fly past. Yes, the red arrows are coming. You take Harry, says the Princess. And here they come, over the Scottish Office and Horse Guards and St James's Park, in Big 9 formation, led by Squadron Leader Richard Thomas, in their Hawk aircraft. The trouble is that if you sneeze, you miss them. But fortunately, they leave trails of red, white and blue. And they're almost at London Airport already. So, a happy, relaxed, but exciting morning for the royal family. And that, of course, means an exciting morning, too, for the crowds of well-wishers below. Who have come to show their affection for the Queen and to wish Her Majesty, on her official birthday, many happy returns of the day. A wave from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and a last wave from the Queen herself.